Hello everyone, my name is Zainab Bajwa and I'm from Pakistan. Currently, I'm doing my Masters of Architecture in Okan University, and in the course ARC 503 Project 2 with Dr. Samia Yildiz, I've designed a project called Eco Villages, where the idea is to possibly design Helsinki's first sustainable urban eco settlement. Starting off, I'll be talking about what eco villages are. Eco-villages are a kind of sustainable neighborhood which are typically planned and managed cooperatively. They are intended to be socially, economically, and ecologically sustainable communities. Compared to sustainable cities, they are much smaller and typically aim for a population of no more than 150 families, which is considered to be the maximum social network according to the findings of sociology and anthropology from Hill and Dunbar 2002. Ecological members are united by the shared ecological, social, spiritual values. Some of them do have the purpose of holistical values. An ecological village is often composed of people who have chosen an alternative life which is away from the main central city, and many of them see the breakdown of traditional forms of community, wasteful consumerist lifestyles, and the destruction of natural habitat and urban sprawl as a disaster and want to avoid that by living away from the city and away from all of the chaos of the city centers. Around the world may exist in variety of shapes and sizes, and they are found in different forms, some of them being modern and very technologically advanced, whereas some of them are still on the ideas of rustic and old traditions of eco-villages. They may share variety of purposes and beginning points and the reasons of them coming together, but they always have the same motives, which is sustainability and organic living and living away from the main cities to have a peaceful life with a better quality of life. The history as we know today about eco-villages, it started in the United States when there was a wave of urban sprawl in the major cities. So there was a group of people in the city of Black Mountain in North Carolina that wanted to move away from the city center, and they moved on the outskirts in a vacant land of 368 acres, where there were 70 families that lived together, and they created a small community for themselves, which is said to be starting from holistic purposes, where they had separate beliefs from the people living in the city, and they wanted to have a more cleaner and sustainable life outside. So that is why they developed their city over there. After that, from knowing the oldest eco village, we know that in 1995 there was a conference that was held uh, in relation to the first eco village that was designed as Finhorn in Scotland. And there were a lot of people that applied to be in it and applied to be a part of the design part of it, but only a few people got selected because this was the first idea and they were not sure if it's going to work or not. Moving on, we know that the eco village is basically a mini version of what a natural world looks like. It's supposed to be a human scale version of a city. Over the years, we've seen all of the negative impact of the climate change and the problems we have with our planet. And according to that, in the GENS conference held in 2009, one of the speakers said a quote that is used all around the Eco Village network, and it is stated as it is said that everyone leaves an ecological footprint which represents the result of our activities on the planet. The greater the environmental damage caused by our activities, the larger the ecological footprint will be, and the future generations will be called upon to deal with it. So talking about that, starting from 1990s, the eco-village concept has evolved and advanced significantly, and the ideas have changed into a lot more broader term rather than a narrow idea of living away from city centers and to have a relationship with nature. Talking about the design part of our eco-villages, the first known idea is by Ian McHarg, who wrote a book in 1969 called Design with Nature. And he's a landscape artist who wanted to bring architecture and landscape design along with the ideas of nature, ecological areas, and flora and fauna. And he then, from that point, designed what now is known as ecological architecture. The 21st century saw a boom in green architecture as the importance of green spaces and urban environment became much clearer than they were before. And now green spaces and green architecture is a part of our society and our context rather than being just an accessory or an add-on to our already made design. From that point, ecological architecture has continued to advance both technologically and in popularity. Unlike the mechanist buildings that replaces, eco-architecture is in harmony with the nature. It includes immediate environs, which makes a big environment. Decisions must be taken on ecological grounds by keeping in mind the different concerns of green architecture and sustainability. including location, sitting and orientation, and as well as well-informed choices of materials that are being used in the design. Eco-architecture is a big discipline that includes a lot of different people from different aspects of life. It requires the collaboration of engineers, planners, physicists, sociologists, economists, and other specialists in addition to architects. Eco Villages itself has a few different elements and why it should be a thing and why it comes together as a whole so perfectly. So the main idea is the participatory processes at the local level. So all of the people coming together to do serve one purpose and to work together with each other and to have a life that they all require and they want and that they deserve. Second is the systems that are designed to focus on long-term sustainability and they have energy efficiency materials and energy efficiency techniques that are being used all over the place, including social, cultural, economical, and ecological systems. The third one is to restoring and the natural and social settings. So basically, if they're using a green space or an empty vacant land, they're not trying to destroy that area. They're not trying to destroy any of the habitats or the ecosystems that are residing on the site, but they are trying to enhance it and they also are trying to integrate that in their daily lives and their communities. Then they range from 50 to 250 people. That is said somewhere in places. That was the first idea that the Gen organization put out to be. But lately we've seen a chain of eco villages that include 400 people. So there are some communities that have over 1,000 people. Eco villages rely on sustainable energy sources. They have green infrastructure, and that is made out of sustainable resources that characterizes the settlement. They have organic farming and permaculture are being used by the locals to meet their fundamental necessities. The community is based on the ideals of co-housing and other forms of supportive community. People believe living together can help them have a better life and they can help their environment when they're all working together with the same motive in their heads and the same ideas and the same motivation in life. The communities in eco villages are completely different than the communities we've seen in our cities or in our different settlements around the world. They allow an integrated life for the children, adults, and marginalized groups, creates a small dimension of the social dilemmas in an eco village. Often eco villages encourage people to balance their personal freedom with the responsibility to others. So they allow them to live a life where they are working not just for themselves and their life, they're also working for the people around them and adding a little bit more of their themselves in their lives and also giving back to our nature and to our environment. They're also being aware of other people that are in contact with them. They share common resources, helping each other with aid. They're also trying to learn how to make right decisions in bigger settings and also resolving conflicts. They are giving importance to the mental and preventive health practices. They learn how to respect each other and also how to develop a community like structure in their lifestyles and by expression of different cultures and implementing the green economy. Talking about the SWOT analysis of this project, which is eco villages in general. So like every other typology and other project, Eco Villages has its own strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. By this analysis, we'll try to understand the functionality and form of this project and whether the modern or old school Eco Villages have their own pros and cons or is a failure in the eyes of architecture. So talking about the strengths, they educate the community, they use natural resources, they are a responsible community, so therefore they do not consume more energy from the society. They try to make their own energy, they're a lot energy efficient. They take a lot of steps towards saving the planet. That comes in the idea of having green architecture or the kind of waste management systems they have going on, the energy management systems they have, as well as the usage of different materials they are using from around the context or around the site for the same functions that they'll be using in order to start up a life for themselves around their area. In the weaknesses, we talk about the lack or the disadvantage of this kind of housing, which is the cost of them because they take a lot of material when trying to make them a lot more energy efficient. Even though this is very beneficial in the long run, at that point the cost is very high. To implement new technology requires a high investment. Not only the invested money, but the firm or authority need to take risk of that technology failure too is also a really big threatening part of it, and is what makes these ideas of eco villages around the world weak. But the opportunities, people are able to walk around the site because it's a shorter site, and it's more so often that they lead to a healthier lifestyle by walking all around the eco village. Since mostly the idea in eco villages is to not have cars or any sort of pollution, so people, if owning cars, they do leave them outside the boundaries of an eco village and they do not bring them inside, and they try to have a lot more cleaner lifestyle than what is seen in the cities. They have a lot of water filtration systems going on, mainly being the stormwater filtration on site, that the water is being used to either plant the all of the vegetation they have on site, or to be used as water that will be later discarded. So in gray water systems or the sewage systems, the pollution that they have is likely to be eaten by trees, plants, and shrubs. Plant life removes carbon dioxide from the air and replaces it with oxygen, and sustainable communities are typically designed with larger percentage of plants, trees, and shrubs than non-green communities or normal cities. If the individual homes are also sustainable, the entire community can live a carbon-free lifestyle. If they're trying to use material that is completely sustainable, and they're also designing it in a green space without having any sort of extra pollution, and they have energy environment management system inside their communities, as well as water filtration or any sort of passive or active energy management system, with the usage of green design or green facades inside houses, they are able to have a fully positive impact to the society and not taking anything away from it. Some communities tend to be more carbon neutral than carbon positive, but that is still better than being carbon negative and then trying to take away from the environment as much as we can rather than giving back anything. So by adding trees and by adding a lot of greenery around the houses, on top of the houses, and on the corners of the site, these communities are able to give back to the society. There are fewer automobile travel miles that will result in less pollution in those neighborhood areas. The threats could be the sustainable lifestyle cannot be achieved overnight. It too does take some time, as well as the continual push that is required for the improvement and the implementation of new technology every time. Green environment, we talk about what a green environment is, which is the environment that we create when we're trying to live a sustainable life, which is very important for us. The convenience of these products that we are available on hand for us, that go from everything from cars, light bulbs, utensils, straw cleaners, mattresses, and everything that else we are using in life, is now available in a green, more sustainable variety. And these are new companies that are coming day by day, creating products that can help us live a green lifestyle. The convenience of these is to make it easier for us to live a sustainable life and to also give back to our society. It is more than important now for us to make a change in our life, and also to adapt to the green lifestyle, to adopt all of these different habits by using material that is completely sustainable and is carbon free. So we're trying to work on our carbon footprint. It has never been easier to live a sustainable lifestyle than it is today in the world, with all of the products that is available to us with a different variety. Talking about Garden City movement, which is an idea that is very much related with eco villages. Since Garden City movement was the idea run by Ebenezer Howard in England, that talks about the idea of bringing town and country together, where town is the main city part of a community or an area, and the country is the suburb areas, and bringing them together would make into something that was called the town country at that point, where he would bring the working class living in an area together with green gardens, and the whole community is based so that they are fully sustainable by themselves. And talking about that further, the first garden city that we know of today was in 1903, created by Ebenezer Howard, called Letchworth. And this was the first idea, and he wrote about a book about this city that was called Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path to Real Reform. And his idea was to have different elements in it that could add to the quality of life of people. These had rough cast render cladding over bricks. They had red roof tiles. They had green drain pipes and water parts, doors, etc. They had gable and dormer windows. They tried to have a garden in between, and then everything run across it. They had pathways for people to walk on, so pedestrian pathways. They had bike lanes. The car pathways were away from the normal pedestrian pathways, so these two traffics do not interlude with each other. People in the community could easily travel on foot. They could reach from one corner to the other corner easily, and these people had gardens from any corner of their house, looking out or looking in, so they it gave them a better quality of life. Since another few ideas in Letchworth were that the street layout was based on an axial layout, with roads radiating out from a central square based on St. Christopher Wren's plan for London, which was never built following the Great Fire of 1666. They had trees that lined on each street that would help with the shadowing and also the sunlight coming through towards the street. They had zoning of different types of buildings that included the areas for the workers' housing as well as the middle class housing, and lastly the commercial and industrial areas. They had fully planned green spaces throughout the area. They were all surrounded by a rural belt. These are some of the illustrations that were made for Letchworth in the planning phase and also in the post-planning phase. Uh, Talking about a case study, climate change, which has increased global warming, is becoming more significant problem. It has emerged as another aspect that calls into question of our way of life. Widespread global and regional climate changes were supposed to have evolved gradually across hundreds of thousands of years of times of scale until a few decades ago, and it was assumed that climate shifts would not be noticeable during human lifetime. That is what scientists believed thousands of years ago. But as we see of today, climate change and climate shifts is a very important and very big factor of our life. This case study talks about Turkey's idea of establishing the first sustainable village, which is around the area of Essos. And because of COVID and the pandemic, it was delayed a bit. But this is the site that the designer Önder Halisdemir chose for his eco village. And these are what he thinks would be the views from the houses in the eco village, and some of the illustrations he made for the different elements of eco village, which are the hotels, the different guest lodges that he has, the houses and the community centers that will be included in this large scale project. Then he talks about the village that will be developed on 65,000 square meters, and also it will be that the settlements that will take off the site would be 10% in ratio, and it would also have a low population density, with all the dwellings standing alone. So there would be separate houses made in a different location around the site, and they also intend to reduce its water footprint by constructing its common water tanks, reserve areas, and water treatment systems. They're planning to design wells to draw on numerous sources of withstand cuts and shortages. And this project was given a grant by the European Union's harmonization program, and that is the reason that this project is actually coming into design and construction, is because of the grant given, and that was a green light for this project to go on. Talking about my specific project, the background is that an idea of what cities would look like in 20 years if architects and artists do not take a positive turn and do not try to design in a green or sustainable way. So picture this, it's 20 years from now, you're standing in a city center, all you see around you are concrete jungles, just constantly working against the clock. As you start walking through the city, the buildings just keep getting taller, areas keep getting denser and crowded. Compared to a decade ago, the issues around us keep getting worse. These are effects of our lifestyle that has uh, on our environment as well as our mental health. So if we see around us is all the buildings that we see are constantly working. People are going up and down and around the city to do their work that they're doing, but none of these people actually care about the life we're living. We are people, humans that live in a space, and that is how we interact with our life. So we are creators of the places that we live in. So if it's a place that is completely messed up, that is what, if we do not change ourselves, that is what the kind of future we see. So if the place is messed up, the people that we are becoming would be just like that. So architects working with spaces should be working towards an idea of having fully sustainable and green designs. um, the atmosphere that we create that comes from our designs has a huge impact on the users. That is why I think architects should be brought forward to be questioned about the reasoning of their designs and the conclusions of what they think should be done with these spaces. Talking about the project statement, nature detachment is a common result of these multitudes of stressors of life that need to be guided. This project brings forth the questions of the link between design and nature and also looks deep into how architects are able to have a huge impact on society and if certain design elements or typologies can act as an aid through the set of design tools set in place based on research. The limitations can vary from the requirements to the monotonous behavior of daily lives. The project statement talks about the nature detachment and how it is a common result of these multitudes of stressors of life and that need to be guided. The project brings forth the questions of the link between design and nature and also looks deep into how architects are able to have a huge impact on society and if certain design elements or typologies can act as an aid through the set of design tools set in place based on research and how we can go on about it with different requirements that are needed for the city. Talking about green buildings that and environments that they create, human comfort is something that we need to fully depend on and to see how the users use those spaces and how they feel comfortable in it and also to understand how architecture plays a huge role in this problem since we reflect the surroundings that we are in and these are people that are using these spaces in their daily lives on an average and talking about its context and however to give back to the society as a positive result and not cause any harm to use as many less resources we can in the construction and to also have zero waste depending on the building itself trying to change as much as we can in our own actions of design and in the implementation of design to have better impact on our society and this is an image that talks about factual and conceptual green building knowledge, which talks about adding in a few elements, whereas subtracting a few elements that could be the elements that are causing pollution, so cars and different mechanisms and technologies that we use in construction as well as the people that are living there and to add different things that can help our nature so that is plants and trees and different energy management system that can help our environment and make our atmosphere a better place for people to live in. Talking forward is precedent studies where I compare four projects with each other to see the different aims and objectives they have and different concepts they have around the world. So the first one we talk about is the region villages, which is currently a hypothetical concept. It is to be designed up post 2022. So the idea is on 100,000 square feet to 300,000 square feet and is done by the Effect Architects. And the concept is that it is a visionary and regenerative model for engineering and facilitating the development of off-grid, integrated and resilient neighborhoods that power and feed self-resilient families around the world. Whereas the objectives were to improve the quality of life of its residents by encouraging more social interaction and meaningful experiences with each other, and also to have the relationship with the nature and the architect surrounding it, as well as to also be a holistically sustainable, self-sufficient area and an environment where people could be living together in cluster homes and be surrounded with landscape and still have the life that they deserve with the quality being a lot better than what it is seen in the cities. And then talking about the second one, which is the Sirius community, it is in Massachusetts, United States, and it is about 120 people. Started about 1978. It is a non-profit educational center and spiritual community that aims to live by their values that and provide the education to other people that can also live in the same lifestyle. Their spiritual foundation reflects awareness of underlying presence of giving rise to and uniting all the things that they have in their society and also in regards to the presence of the people living there individually and collectively and they try to find them in a place where they're spiritually self-centered and purely awoken and they feel grateful for the life they have in those outskirts of the city rather than having them in a metropolitan area. The third one that I talk about is Crystal Waters, which is in Queensland, Australia. It's for about 200 people, started in 1984 by BVN Architects. They are in a rural area and they talk about the standards of the community that is a lot more high density and most homes deploy solar and rainwater catchment. Yet the nearest town is 30 minutes drive and the community itself is spread across five steep ridges, making Crystal Waters very much part of a dominant car culture. People do use cars around here, but they only use them to go to the nearest city if and when something is needed from them. In early design stages, six basic objectives were agreed upon, which were clean water, clean air, soil, um, uh, which would result in food, to work towards a guarantee of meaningful activity for all the people living in the community, to create a place that is healthy for to play and to be in a safe recreational zone for the kids and the families, and also to have an active social interaction and healthy shelter and accommodation for all the people residing in the community. Last one is the Manhur community. It is in Turin, Italy. It is for 600 people and started in 1975. It is known as one of the most fast-paced, high-tech eco villages around the world. The philosophy was that every human being is a part of a spiritual system of great powers. Everyone living in Damanhur is named after an animal they feel close to. This is based on their holistical and spiritual beliefs. It has its own molecular biology lab that tests their food that they grow on site. They have a more technology where they have smartphones for every member of the society that can help them in communicating across the people and the community. Then the next thing we talk about is the case study of a retreat, which is the Huizhen Retreats in China, and it is a hotel slash retreat project that talks about how to design in a green space between a forest without ruining it as least as possible. And the feature of the construction is in the mountains, and the service streamline hotel gives two axes of the architectural design. This project has a graceful mountain shape and bamboo sea in a very good condition. They basically have designed with bamboo inside this forest, and they talk about the privacy of people, how to use the contours throughout the mountains, and to design an idea that has a strong relationship between man and nature. They've used trees in different areas that act as a privacy cover and the part of an atmosphere. Second thing I talk about is the programming of the project itself, where there are different programs all spread out across the site. Some of them being more primary purposes or functions in the project, whereas some of them being secondary and tertiary. So some of the main ones are the residence houses, the guest lodges, the community centers, the retail stores, the storage of the organization, as well as the existing lake on site, greenhouses, wind turbines, energy management offices, energy plants, town halls, communal gardens, pedestrian walkways, roads, bike lanes, workshops, farms, vegetation land, parking, recycling centers, orchards, and woodlands. Second is the matrix that talks about their relationship with each other in the form of adjacency, which ranges from primary, secondary, and undesired. So when we talk about entrance, which is supposed to be a lot closer to the guest lodges, since people are coming in and they need to directly go to the entrance, whereas the community center is also primarily connected as close to it as possible. And the retail area, then the parking area should be very close to it so people are able to walk. All of the pedestrian walkways should start from there. A lot of the communal gardens could be closer to the entrance, whereas some of the activities such as the resident houses, the lake, the greenhouses, the wind turbines, the workshops, and the energy plants are some programs that do not have to be very close to the entrance, and vice versa to the resident houses and the guest lodges. After that, there's the area calculation that talks about how much area is required for different activities for people that will be residing inside the eco village. So, talking about the people in the eco village is around ideology is around 250 people, out of which there would be 30 houses for family of five. There would be 20 houses for family of four and 20 houses of family of two slash three. Then there are guest lodges for 50 people, the community center for these people that are living in this eco village, as well as the storage that the community center would have with it. The greenhouses that would add to their activities and their daily functions in life, the energy management offices that would help run the energy plants with the wind turbines, as well as the farms and the green areas that they have, and the gardens with parkings for 25 cars and the circulation added in it, and recycling center on site. The total area comes to about 190,000 square feet, which is about 1.76 hectare. The concept is to provide an example of one planet living. The village will use natural materials and local flora to harvest rainwater and capture solar energy. Through its diversified housing and common amenities, the design creates a strong feeling of place and community in a pleasant garden city environment. Another advantage of this one-of-a-kind community-based development concept is that it takes a modest approach to housing affordability. The village will be built around numerous courtyards with community center in the center of the eco village and the mixed residences, apartments, and a few retail stores on the sides of it. It aspires to be net zero energy, highly water efficient, and practically designed to foster a strong sense of community with numerous informal gathering spaces and layers between private and public areas. The landscape and the building designs will pay homage to the land's history and natural surroundings and the cultures that have lived through it all. The site selection was based on a few different factors that had uh, different characteristics based on what the idea of an eco-village and requirements of it can be. These are as follows: green spaces, open land, away from the urban development of the metropolitan cities, access to highways, flat land and level land. Some of the sites that were examined for this project are the suburbs of these cities, such as number one, Helsinki, Finland, number two, the suburbs of Tallinn in Estonia, number three is outskirts of Bucharest in Romania, that is bordering Bulgaria, four is areas next to the Baltic Sea around Gdansk, Poland. The reasons for selecting these sites is based on an analysis done by the European Union about the eco-villages that currently exist and run in Europe and the division between Eastern and Western European region in the continent, mostly situated in the Western region and the popular countries that are widely known around the world. Some of these cities are as marked in these maps. These are the list of eco-villages that are currently present in Europe. So, talking about the four sites I talked about in Tallinn, Estonia, there is no legal rules that allow for any eco-village to be constructed on the outskirts of the main capital city. Whereas in Gdansk, Poland, there is a project that is currently underway for the green and sustainable design, uh, remodeling of some parts of the city center. Whereas the outskirts of Romania in Bucharest, bordering Bulgaria, are some very green spaces, but since it's on a complete border site, they are out of question for construction of any sorts. So the fourth site that is left is Helsinki, Finland. So talking about the site firstly, before even going to the site data and the site analysis, talking about the legal documentation, is that the laws of using green spaces in Finland. So these are all from the Helsinki Housing and Planning Department in Finland, and they talk about how to use different spaces and different areas. They talk about lands that are owned by the government and how people can use them, and then the process that they need to follow to use them. So they talk about the different projects that can incorporate impact on human health, living conditions, and quality of life, impact on soil, water, air, climate, flora and fauna, and biodiversity, impact on social structures, constructed environment, landscapes, cityscapes, and cultural heritage, and the impact on the utilization of natural resources. So these are some of the laws that, in compliance with the working of our design, architects can get a permit by using the Construction Act, and they can get it investigated, and people can come and they can study the designs, and then that is how the authorities give the permission for a contractor to start construction processes, and from there the project can be started. So the site is located in Bikinranta, Helsinki, which is on the outskirts of the northern Helsinki city in Finland. Finland is located in Europe. The total area of the site marked is 16 hectare, which is about 160,000 meters square. The perimeter around the site runs for about 1.85 kilometer, which is also 1.15 miles. The site is located in a green land that has existing water on site. The diagram on the right is the wind direction that talks about the two different winds that we get on a site, which is the winter winds and the summer winds. Since Helsinki is considered to be above the Arctic Circle, we need to open them from the summer winds, since the summer winds do not last for very long and the summer season is not very extensive in Helsinki, and we need to close from the winter winds since it's a lot more snowy and colder wind. So that is something that helps us in placing and orienting the building in on site. So northeast is where the winter winds come from, and that is the area that needs to be closed off, whereas southwest area is Southwest direction is where the summer winds come from, and that is where the buildings need to be positioned to open and gather those winds inside the buildings to keep them warm through the summers. The climate analysis talks about the annual temperature chart of Helsinki as well as the annual rainfall chart, with a lot of rainfall during the summer time that leading to October, and then the snow that goes from November to January, and then talking about the annual sunrise and sunshine chart that shows the longest days where the sun sets at 10:50 in June, whereas sun rises at 3:53. And moving on to winters, the sun can set in 3 p.m. and also can rise at 9:25, making those days in the winters very short. Annual daylight hours we get in Helsinki is about 12 hours in early spring, 18 hours in mid summers, 12 hours in early fall, and 5 hours and 49 minutes in early winter. Moving on to the major and minor roads of the site, we talk about the road access with the primary, secondary, and tertiary roads. Some of the main highways and accessways to the site itself include the three main highways of Helsinki, as well as some of the tertiary roads that go inside the communities and the living residential areas around the site. The accessibility of the site based on different areas and different locations in the city of Helsinki. Talking about the accessibility to site, I talk about the distances from different locations in the city of Helsinki for any people that are trying to access to the site. The first one being the Helsinki Vantaan Airport, which is about 20 minutes away from the site and 45 minutes on public transport. The Malmi Airport in Helsinki is about 30 minutes by driving and 47 minutes by public transport. The Helsinki city center itself is about 25 minutes by car and 26 minutes by a bus that takes directly uh, people from Helsinki city center to the area of Vikinranta. Then talking about the Supreme Court or the administration buildings of the city are about 40 minutes on public transport and 21 minutes by car. The closest mall to the site is 7 minutes by car and 25 minutes by a bus. The hospital that is the closest to the site is about 14 minutes by car and 36 minutes by public transport, as well as the Malmi Hospital, which is just as close, being about 13 minutes on car and 35 minutes on bus. And the University of Helsinki, being the biggest institute there is in Helsinki city center, is about 19 minutes by car and 44 minutes by city center, as marked in the image on the left of the legend. Talking about the public access on site is the distances people would need to cover to get to the site itself by using public transport. So on the image on the right top, it marks both the bus stops near the site and the train stops that there are, which has some metro stops and one main train stop of the city. And on the image on the left, it marks the three areas of the Malmi airport, the Helsinki city center, and the Helsinki Vantaan airport. Coming from Helsinki Vantaan airport, it takes about 27 minutes on a bus and then 66 minutes of walking to the site, whereas Malmi airport takes about 18 minutes on bus and 17 minutes of walking. Helsinki city center takes about 20 minutes on bus and 15 minutes by walking, whereas taking the metro from Helsinki to Vantaan airport is the only metro that people are able to access. You can get on one of the two access on the site in the bus stops near them. One of them is 15 minutes away by walking, one of them is 17 minutes away by walking, and then resulting in 45 minutes of travel and 40 minutes of travel respectively on the train itself towards the site. Talking about the noise analysis on site, since the site is in a relatively calmer area, there are some areas around the site closer to the highways that are relatively more quiet. So the bigger diagram shows the crowded public spaces that are very loud. Then there are semi-crowded public spaces that are relatively loud. Then there are semi-public spaces which are quiet, and lastly, which are the deserted private areas which are very quiet. The site views, these are for the public parking that is outside the site, the north elevation, and the few buildings that are around the site. These are all images that were acquired by Google Images, and as well as the site and context data of the bike paths in the city of Helsinki and the transit lines in Helsinki that are currently running. Talking about the initial design process, I talk about the master plan and the division of the programs around the site based on the matrix that was made according to the functions and the programs. I've placed the parking closer to the entrance, which if I were to mark the entrances of the site would be the main entrances from here, which is the main road that leads to the site right next to the highway that is present here. If I were to have an entrance from this side, it would be very difficult to let the traffic in without having a lot of problem on this roundabout area. Having these water bodies existing on site helps a lot in planning the areas. So moving forward, the main plans that I did were for the administration building, which is the main entrance and clinic area. So this is the first aid clinic that we have on site, the main offices, the reception area with sitting areas, and as well as the healing center and the workshops that are present inside for people to work in and the therapy that they need. Lastly, it's one of the bedrooms in the apartments that were designed based on the amount of people that there are. Talking about green design or sustainability and ecological design, I talk about the wind turbine installation inside the project aims to run with wind turbines and using the energy produced by them. So when we see the installation of wind turbines in the laws and regulations formed by Finland, the installation and alteration or replacement of a standalone wind turbine within the boundaries of a house or a block of lots can be considered to be permitted development, not needing an application for planning permission provided the limits and conditions listed below are met. So they provided a list of different requirements that are needed on site based on which they would be allowed to put wind turbines on a project. So some of them are based on the distances between the ground levels and then the blades of the wind turbines, which is about 5 meters between the blades, and from the ground it has to be 11.1 meters, and that is should be the marking the highest point of the turbine wind turbine itself. For the additional security and their working, talks about the air source heat pumps on the same property, and that they should have around 3.8 square meters of a circle area around them for them to properly work without interfering in anything, and about 400 feet in distance without any building that is higher than 2 floors that can act as a hurdle between the wind that the wind turbines are catching in order to make those wind energy. Then talking about the materials of the wind turbines, it should use non-reflective materials on board. Finland being a rather more stronger and powerful a country, they have the ability to significantly boost its wind power capacity over the next few years. And the goal for the wind power industry is to produce at least 30 TWh of yearly wind power in Finland by 2030, which is amounts to roughly 30% of the country's electricity consumption at the time, which goes from 7% to 30% with an increase of 23% over the next 10 years. Then talking about the wind sources itself, the images show the dimensions and the requirements for the wind turbines that are put on site, and then the average rated outputs that they give over the years based on 1990, 2000s, 2010s, and then 2015 and 16, which is the latest measurement that we have. Then the different parts of the wind turbine and how they are connected to energy plants that can be then used through the energy management systems that are produced inside the plants itself, including the transformers, the switchyards, the tower itself, and then the blades of the main wind turbine body that use the wind energy to create the electricity. Then I talk about an energy management system, which is the process of controlling, regulating, and monitoring a building's or company's energy consumption. It can be lowered by energy management. They can be a lot more energy efficient if they try different techniques that are trying to save energy and reuse and reduce a lot of the wastage that we're taking from the energy, whether it's electrical energy or any other sort of energy that is being used around the building, and can be mapped out around the site to equally divide the reuse and reduce of the energy itself. Companies spend a significant amount of money on energy, and the only thing is that these percentages have risen over the years based on the amount of money, the labor, the materials, and everything that is spent on that project itself. The energy management system provides them with a better option and a more sustainable way of running their project. Um, and then talking about the ecological design details in the project itself, there is the grey water system where that water is treated in through a device of filtration and can be reused in different parts of the project itself. Grey water treatment systems typically go through the following phases of processed grey water. The solids are being separated from the water, and then it removes the lints and other coarse contaminants from the systems to prevent clogs and fouling. This is done through a coarse filtration with sand and rocks, and then later it is passed through proper filtration. Once the coarse filtration is done, the water is now processed through finer filters that removes all of the impurities in the water, and also water runs down a bed of proprietary material in the processor for fine filtering. Filtration, absorption, and biological treatment are used to remove contaminants from the water so that it is completely ready to be used. But before it is reused around the site, it is disinfected through UV rays, and it is purified water that is then stored for recycling. Ultraviolet disinfection completes the treatment processes. After the treatment, the water can be saved for using in flushing toilets, gardening, or doing laundry. These are the kind of different activities that do not require complete clean water. Most plants can benefit from grey water. Soaps and detergents are likely to be present in the water from our shower, bath, or laundry. These contain salts as well as phosphorus and nitrogen nutrients. By immediately reusing grey waters in the garden, we are adding essential nutrients to the soil, and because they do need phosphorus and nitrogen, and they are some materials that are commonly used in fertilizers. So following are some of the images that show the diagrams for the grey water system. So getting all of the water from different parts of the house and different parts of the building, coming from the drinking water that we're using, or any water that is being used inside any electronics, known as the white water, and then the treated water that is going towards these buildings is in all in a cycle. The black water is considered the sewage water that leaves the house without being filtered, since that is completely not okay for it to be used. And then the grey water can then return back to all of the activities where drinking water is not necessarily used. In the image below that, it shows that the water from the bath can then be biofiltered and then sent through sand and gravel filter, and then sent to a storage tank. Since it's after the filtration, it's completely clean for it to be used in plants, and then later can be pushed through irrigation pipes towards the plants that are outside in the vegetation area. Then coming to green facade is one of those techniques that can help us in energy efficiency, and a lot of sustainable methods are coming through green facades. It is a very sustainable technique and a sustainable way of designing any building and any of the walls or facades that we have in our design. For various reasons, sustainability today is producing an important and interesting approach between architecture and the environment. When we talk about green facades, they are less likely to draw and lose heat since they cover the outsides of the building. They try to retain in the heat that is inside, or the cool air that is inside the building, whereas any sort of X rays. Continuing on to the design part of the project, as we know about the site and the measurements of the site itself already and the site analysis, I talk about the general idea of the site and the project itself and the one planet living concept, and then how the site needs to use the materials present on and around the site as the construction materials for the project of the eco village. On the left in this image, as you can see, this is the master plan of the site itself. So the white buildings are the buildings that are already present in the context of the site. These are the main highways around the site, and when you have to enter the site, this road comes either through here, or this is the main tertiary road that connects from the highway and the secondary roads towards the site. This being the entrance of the site that leads to the parking, which is about a 25 car parking for the people of the eco village. And on the southern left corner of the site, there are the two wind turbines. There are the wind turbines on this corner that basically require a 500 feet radius for them to work without any hurdles coming in them. So all of the trees that are planted on the corner of the site are usually either present on site or have been added in compensation to any of the trees that were cut down. Moving forward to the water bodies on the site, so these are the three water bodies that were already present. This is a pond that's in the site. This is a small water body that was disconnected to this part of the river that is flowing on the southern corner of the site itself. These are the pathways that were made in the idea of keeping the plants and the trees around them in the place that they are, and then they were placed around them. For the housing, it was placed in a way that these circles are connected to each other, trying to make a more organic form that would then later have its own design based on the amount of rooms that every house requires. So going on about the design process of these houses, this is how the initial circles were connected to each other, later forming into these shapes of 4, 5, and 3 circles. Uh, then they were placed on top of each other to try to minimize the space that is required for the built environment, and then also trying to create a tight-knit community. This ended up in making a few different modules. These modules were based on the houses that could be placed on top of each other, making sure that they are structurally stable on top of each other, and the houses placed on top are smaller in area than the ones at the bottom and have more surface area to cantilever through onto the site. And then later, this is the image that was formed. The lighter lines show the buildings at the bottom and the darker ones show at the buildings on top. These are some of the plans of all of these buildings placed around the site, with different spaces based on the amount of people that would be living in the house, and that is in correlation to the amount of families that would be accessing the site as a residents of the eco village. These are some of the houses placed on the site around this pathway that was designed, and then it was symmetrically placed on the other side, so it keeps the idea of the eco village and the accessibility in and around the site the same for all the people living on this side of the site as well as this side of the site. These two buildings that we see are the greenhouses of the eco village that would have all of the different activities for the people in terms of plantation and vegetation, as well as these gardens that we can see around the site. These are two of the main gardens, and then there is one communal garden that is right next to this building, which is the community center, as well as a green uh, that there's a large tree on site that is then used to become a tree house, which is made out of glass that would help people in having a form of aesthetics. This tree house is made out of glass, and it encompasses one of the largest plants on site. Then this is a tiled playground area that is for kids to play on. This is the main building that is right next to the parking, which is the entrance building. Then we have the rest of the houses. These larger buildings are the workshops. The building on the top here is the one that has the therapy and the offices, as well as this one at the bottom that has the school in it. And then the houses down here, the larger groups are basically guest lodges that are for the guests that come. And on complete left that we see here is the energy management plant with the electricity towers. So when we come on this side, is the master plan basically shows the different areas and the plans that some of them were designed. So there's a planting garden, there's a healing garden for the users of the site, the car parking with the turning radius of a car, and then a two-way street that comes from the entrance. Then there is the administration building, which is on right next to the entrance, and it has the clinic. It has a main office, and then it has a reception area for all the people to sit in, and then it is then connected to the community center. Then the therapy, this has a light therapy, a sound therapy, both of them having natural ways of using. So light therapy naturally would be done by perforations and different forms of uh, piercings in the walls that would let the light come in, as well as the sound therapy, which is done naturally in a way where the sound is traveled through different elements of architecture, creating beautiful harmonies that help people with their environment and their lifestyle, as well as the studio apartment that mainly shows the idea of how the other apartments are designed. So there is the entrance. The windows of the bedrooms are placed in terms of the orientation of the building itself, mostly facing towards the southwest to keep the winds coming through on the summer days, and then also since it's the southwest, it would have the sunset sun, so no direct sun would be coming in to the earlier hours of the days. The plan over here shows one of the bedrooms, and then the connection to the washroom, the sitting area, and a small kitchenette, and then how it would be larger, made for larger families than of one or two. And then this group of buildings that was made in terms of keeping the guest lodges in separate rooms, as well as designed on the same idea as the bedrooms. And they have the process of the adjoining and then the placement on ground and first level, resulting in clusters that are used around the site for accommodation to keep in the link with the circular and organic theme of the design. This is a reference scale, and these two images are basically reference images that try to show the idea of the circular houses and the courtyards that are placed in some of these buildings. This diagram basically shows the main section of the housing clusters that are placed in one of the areas of the site. So this is the cluster that is present on this part of the site, which is the guest lodges. And this part of the diagram shows the gradient between the cold and the hot wind. So the hot air rises in the room, so it would rise and it would leave through the windows or the skylights that are present in the rooms, as well as the cold air would settle down inside the room, and then it would all of them would lead from the right to going towards the left for the summer winds, and then for the winter winds it would be from the left to the right, and that is how they would work throughout and around the site. Then in the second diagram showing basically the water filtration plant, that the water that is being used from the washrooms is then first sent for coarse filtration, then it is sent for fine filtration, then it is sent to the filtration plant where the water is completely disinfectant for any contaminants, and then it is used in the plantation, as well as the rainwater catchment system that is then finally filtered before selling into the filter plant, and then all of the different aspects of water plants that there are, which is then moves to the second part of the diagram, which is the light and sunshine diagram based on the windows that are placed in the different directions of the site. So this is the summer sun, this is the winter sun. So winter sun is a lot more diagonally straight than compared to the summer sun. So talking about the summer sun, it would go directly above the bedrooms, and it would stay more so in the front part of it, whereas the winter sun would be a lot more straighter and would give less sunlight inside the room and would be a lot more outer. But once it is during the daytime, it can go a lot further. On to the right, this is the section line for the second section, which is the site section that shows both of the wind turbines present on site, which is on this part of the site, as well as the greenhouses that are present, two of them on the site, the water bodies that are part of the river, and the boundaries of the site itself, the energy plant, the tower, as well as the house, the green as well as the houses that are present there and the guest lodges along with the tree house that is on site. The housing design ideation basically shows the different levels of houses that would be, since it's a one-story house and then they would be placed on top of each other. These are the sections that show the insides of the house, how it would be when it is a house with along with a few rooms. Some of the more ecological detailed designs are the solar panel installation with all of the elements that it requires, as well as the rainwater collection that would be placed on all of the buildings on the edges. And then lastly is the green walls and the biophilic facades, as we talked about before, the different elements that it requires for it to get stuck onto the wall with the mesh and the plantation and irrigation panel. Lastly, it is the 3D views of the model of the site itself and the project, with this being the main building of administration, and then the treehouse building that has the tree in the middle, and then the greenhouse with the water body right next to it. The site relatively on the sides is emptier, so that is why it shows a lot of the outside views, and then the houses placement, and then the plantation inside the greenhouse, and then the vegetation areas, and then lastly a general bird's eye view of the site itself with all of the functions placed around. Lastly, coming back to the report with the conclusion of the project development, it goes through the timeline of the starting of the project with the ideation through the site analysis and then the design initial and final stages. The project was developed in steps based on the requirement and the understanding of the concept of eco villages, their needs and their ways to design something that is better than what we've seen in the past. Some of the key points of the design are as follows. It is supposed to be designed as an eco-village that further maintains a way of life that is smoothly integrated into natural world by combining all of the characteristics of an eco-village. To select the site, some characteristics needed to be seen in the context of the location, which were green spaces, open land outside urban development, access to highways, flat land, The site was located in the outskirts of Helsinki, Finland, the total area being 16 hectares with an approximate perimeter of 1.15 miles. The site is 16 kilometers away from Helsinki Airport and can be accessed by bus or metro from the airport. The city center is 8.1 kilometers or 25. The project aims to cater to 275 to 300 people in the community with a built space area of 17,652 meters square, rounding up to about 1.8 hectare, which is about 11.25 built area to 88.75% unbuilt area or green area ratio. There is one main access to the site through the tertiary road on the western side. Since the main road is always busy and not practical to make an entrance on that side, the project was created with environmental and ecological considerations. The pathways were designed in order to keep as many existing trees in their original places as possible, and the rest of the programs were placed strategically around them. Other trees and gardens were placed in order to create shadows and shaded areas. The parking is the first to be accessed from the entrance side, since the village people prefer to walk so the cars can be out of the way and isolated, whereas the rest of the pathways has space for pedestrian and bicycle traffic. Lastly, the greenhouses were designed as a focal point of the eco-village, since it plays a huge role in the main source of produce and the biggest activity for the people of this community. The treehouse building adds to the idea of living in a forest while keeping it modern and urban. Below is the master plan again showing all of the programs, and lastly it has the section and the references that all of the data for the report has been taken from. Thank you.